maybe next time. All right, that looks good. Chat. All right, so people on Facebook and YouTube over on that camera, guys, and we have Instagram here. So any questions, everybody let us know in the comments, and I'll do my very best to keep up. Otherwise, let's get rolling. Welcome back to the Foxy Property Chat podcast. To start things off, Phoebe.
So is YouTube just on you?
No, that's sorry. This one's Instagram.
Oh, Instagram. That's what I meant.
I'll move it around.
To watch you, but...
No, I'll move it around. And the other.
Cool.
To start things off, Phoebe, you've been to a couple of meetups, retreats, business conferences recently.
Yeah.
You've spoken to a bunch of agents, I assume. What's the feeling out there heading into spring?
Oh, there's a bit of, I guess, not concern. Just obviously the market's changing. There's a lot of conversation about how the market is changing. We are seeing that. So we have properties that have now had we've gone from the styling being in those properties for about 5 weeks. If we look a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, properties were selling quite quickly. Furniture was coming out within 5 weeks. We are now having properties that have had the styling in there for 8 weeks. The full 8 weeks are now needing to extend without those offers coming through. So as a styling company, we're seeing the differences. Discussions with the real estate agencies and agents that I have been talking with a lot about getting those preparations and the groundwork done for spring. I am seeing for us forward bookings, we have heaps of those coming through. There is going to be a lot of properties coming to the market, but we're obviously, Evie's not playing along with us today. We obviously are now, we have vendors reach out to us before they're selecting the real estate agents. The feeling for us is a little bit different to what I gather when I'm talking to these real estate agents. So there's a lot more effort, a lot more work to go in to get to those listings, to prepare those vendors to get to the market, and to also the reassurance that's required to get them to the market. And then once it's on the market, it's no longer waiting for those buyers to come to you. It's really, really leveraging those listings for the further ongoing work, but also to get those buyers in and putting an offer on the table.
Good to know. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
All right. So let's move into the main topic of today. Now, on yesterday, which was a Monday, you presented Foxy's the vision for the future of the team for the next 2 years. I mean, we'll just briefly touch on it because people probably aren't super interested in us. But what's the benefit of sharing a vision like this to the team?
So I think I spoke last week when we went to Elite Retreat. One of the speakers, Dr. Jason Fox, was talking about how you get sort of, as a business, you start to get busy, and then you're really busy, and then you just start staying in the zone. It's default thinking, and you don't really think about all the other ways to sort of work on your business, generate new ideas, everything like that. I think one of the other factors that kind of builds into that is losing the way that you talk about where the business is heading and the growth of the business and the vision, I guess is what we'll call it. We actually did call it the Foxy vision. And one of those, if you asked me last week where I see our business going in 5 years, I didn't have an answer for you. I would say, well, we are at 10 years now, and we're only 5 years into the business. I don't know what the future holds. And that, as for our employee, and that's an honest answer. However, we've been able to dive into it a whole lot more over the last week. But for our employees, that's a bit of a vague, wishy-washy answer. So for those employees who are here and are driven by progression, and by being part of a business that they feel is exciting and has the growth and the intention for the growth, and they can see where their career path is heading, you're going to get so much more out of those employees. They're going to feel so much more engaged, and you're going to have the long-term benefits of them staying. So in a job market that is really quite transient at the moment with all these the COVID great COVID resignation, really super important that we're looking after our staff and making sure that they're feeling like they're part of something big and important and progressive, that's the word I'm after, and that's what the benefit of sharing our vision with our team was yesterday.
So, yeah, obviously you'd recommend to other businesses to
100%.
create their own vision and...
Don't get bogged down in your vision. Don't let it hold up what you're doing now. Jake's over off the screen and he would normally have input on this, but don't let it get bogged down and don't let it hold you up if you don't have a vision, but having that in place and being vocal about it and allowing your staff and your employees to be engaged and actually have say on that vision, you're going to get far more investment from them, and long term that's only going to reap rewards.
Yeah, well, just speaking from as one of those employees,
Yeah.
I can say that it is exciting and it is good to have something to aim for, I suppose, and know the business, where the business is headed, because then you can go, well, do I want to come along for the ride?
Yeah.
And where is my place in that business? And I think having that for all 20 plus staff, and as you shared, potentially 40 plus staff in a couple of years, I think it's important, and where you fit in on that vision. So, yeah, good job with that one.
Well, thanks. Exciting times ahead.
Absolutely. All right, Q&A. B6.projects on Instagram asked, the process of planning a house, a home staging house, in a short amount of time. So how, you've got a short amount of time to plan an install. I don't know, what's the process of how you go about that?
Okay. Again, depends on your business model. For us, we own the furniture, so I'm going to go down that part. You lock in and you want an installation tomorrow. I'm just going to base it off that. I'm going to use a 2-bedroom unit as an example. My first thing I do is select the furniture. That's going to determine my colour base, if I'm going to use any sort of coloured furniture. Do I need big statement artwork? All those sort of things are going to be based off the furniture. Select my furniture, select the fluff. So these are the bits of the pieces that are going to go onto the truck. So this is my artwork, my linen, my cushions, towels, the baskets, the trees, all those bits and bobs. They're all going to get selected first to allow the boys to then load the truck in without a hold up. So basically I will select that within an hour and the boys can start loading the truck. They would have the truck then also loaded within an hour, as long as they've got the time and space and all that sort of stuff. As long as there's 2 boys available, we're just going to say it's available. While they're loading up the rest of the truck, I'm going to go out the back and then do the selections for all the accessories and all the little bits and pieces that go in a stylist's car. So that I'm talking about vases and soap dispensers and outdoor plants, glasses with limes, magazines, all those bits and bobs, lamps, table lamps. Then I have everything selected.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
That's 2 hours of work, or probably 2.5 hours of work on my part, and an hour for the truck. Done.
But I guess,
Easy.
yeah. Well, it's easy coming from a place of when you've done thousands of 2,000 plus installs.
Yeah.
And you have the experience and you trust in the team. So it's hard to give that advice, particularly for B6.projects. But I mean, it just comes with experience and processes and confidence in the team.
I guess one of the things that I don't hold up my process. I'm not going to get the floor plan out. I'm not going to get the floor plan. I'm not going to look at the measurements. I'm going to know the floor plan, obviously off the top of my head. I'm going to have had a look at the photos. I'm going to have an idea on layout. But I'm not going to sit there and go, well, do I use a 2.5 or do I use a 3-seater? Or do I do 2 occasionals or do I do 1 occasional? Is it going to fit? Do I need my entertainment unit to be this big or like bigger? I go for furniture that I know is going to fit. I don't get bogged down in those tiny little details. If I am worried about furniture fitting, I send extras on the truck. So I might send a pair of occasionals and a single occasional for the stylist to then make those decisions on site. I don't get bogged down in that small stuff. As far as theme and feel and style that I go for, what I have in the warehouse is going to cohesively give me the best outcome and the best look, as long as it works for that property, is what I'm going to go with, especially if it's a quick turnover. So if that agent last time had a certain colour, I'm going to try and avoid that colour for this next listing, particularly if that listing is still live, because I want them to be unique and stand out. Lots of those little factors.
Yeah, fantastic. Good answer, Phoebe.
Oh, thank you.
Next question from Staged NZ. Do you give an inventory list when sending a quote? So what you're going to
Yeah,
take?
we do a vague, so basically I will say to you the big items. I go through each room, these are the pieces that we're going to hire. Bedroom, you get a double bed ensemble, bedside tables and lamps. I generically say linen, we have a throw rug, a couple of decorative cushions, artwork and accessories. And that is literally all that I give a vague overview so someone can have an idea, but at the very end we also have a disclaimer that the stylists have the ability to substitute and delete where is necessary to make sure the job is perfect. So the quote's given to our best ability at the time of giving the quote, at the time of the consult. Things change. So we'll never do it. We'll always make those decisions in the best interest of the property.
I think having that asterisk down the bottom, and so how
And
clearly,
communicating
yeah, how clearly do you communicate that? What process is that communicated? Because I have heard of the many years I've been here, instances of the client saying, "Oh, on the quote there was this, and we didn't get that, or we received this instead," and
Yeah.
it's because of a certain reason. But how clearly is that communicated?
So the way that we verbalise that is that, like, we'll send you through the quote, it'll itemise everything out, but we won't leave unless we're happy that it's perfect. So for us, that means we will ensure that the rooms are full, we'll make sure that the right size rug is provided. We don't necessarily say there is a disclaimer at the bottom of the quote that says this, that is not there. It is in bold at the bottom of the quote, is also on the terms and conditions that the client signs. However, that's not my fail safe. If someone comes back to me and says, "Where are my bar stools?" I'm not going, "Well, our quote says we can delete it." That's never ever going to be a good customer service point.
Yep.
So it's about an explanation and communication, and if it needs bar stools, I'll get bar stools back there. So
Yep.
it's there, but it's not my fail safe.
Cool. You mentioned that on the terms and conditions, so we'll jump into that. Do you have a proposal service agreement? They actually ask that I could base mine off. However, I assume we're probably not going to send them exactly what we use. But if we can't do that, what do we include in those terms and conditions?
So we've got what insurance covers us. What insurance? I'm just going to be a hobbit. What insurance covers and what insurance doesn't cover. So, for example, damage caused by pets is something that we now have in bold and underlined. It has the hire period, the need for extension, the need for notification of that extension. The early return of furniture is something that we do have in there, because it's a question that we get asked often is, do they get a refund if they return early? The ability to allow us to return that at the end of the period, return it within 2 business days of that date to allow it to fit into the truck schedule. And then also some legalities, sort of stuff if they don't pay, and who's responsible for the legal fees, all that sort of stuff at the very end.
How did you come up with this? Did you have a lawyer, solicitor, or how did... No?
I would like to say yes. No. So we engaged a couple of stylists, and I've spoken about this before. We used stylists and basically used a format of... We copied it. I'll just say it. We copied some other ones and adjusted it to where we needed it, and have been using it now. Have had it go through a couple of instances where the people have paid and have had it go through a legal process.
Yep.
And it's stood up and it's withheld under those situations.
Excellent.
But basically, there's not much you can change. So I'm happy.
Yeah.
Make sure you actually make sure it's for you.
Yeah.
That's the most important part. If it's not relevant for your business, you're going to have an issue. So you need to make it tailored to you and probably have someone read through it.
Cool.
Can I clarify?
Yeah, here, Jake's back on camera.
We didn't copy it in the sense that we took somebody else's and started using it.
Oh,
We copied sections. We did a bit of research on what else was out there that we could find. But to start with, it was something that we didn't have any legal team or lawyers look at. But we were pretty confident based on where we were getting some of the clauses and stuff in there that it was going to stand up. And like you said, since then, because we've been forced to, we've had some people look at it and they're pretty happy with what they were happy with it. We actually didn't make any changes, so we're happy with where it is now. But it was just looking at other places to start with.
Excellent. Okay, last question here from Rick from Newcastle. Thanks for asking questions as always, Rick. Appreciate it. For areas like Toowoomba and Gold Coast, how do you go about charging for this to make it worth your while, if you do it all?
Gold Coast is a little bit different to Toowoomba. Gold Coast for us is 45 minutes-ish down the coast. As a basis for us to go to north side of Brisbane, it's an hour as well, 45 minutes an hour. So us to get to the Gold Coast is similar to north side of Brisbane. There's not really much difference. However, when we go to north side of Brisbane, the traffic we've encountered plus the access that we encounter on the north or the west side of Brisbane is significantly worse than the very flat label land down at the Gold Coast. So there's not really much of a difference for us, aside from it's actually better to install than the Gold Coast sometimes. Toowoomba's different. Toowoomba is two hours. 2 hours up a mountain for a truck. So that's a lot more that we have to consider. And to be honest, we won't. The only time I've ever installed in Toowoomba was for a repeat client, and the agreement had to be. It was a full truck for a full house style. So there's a minimum for the jobs up in Toowoomba. They're few and far between though. Up to Toowoomba. But it's basically you have to account for your time, and you have to account for that truck. is now out. That's not just that time for the truck to do that one job. So it's not just an extra $350 in delivery. That truck now can't do an entire install. You need to consider that.
It's also something that's easier for us now with the third truck. If we only have one truck, tying up that one truck up, 2 hours to and from Toowoomba for the entire day, like you said, means that we can't do an install in Brisbane. So we never did it at that point. Now that with the third truck, there's a little bit more buffer in the system that by sending the truck up there for half a day, we're not necessarily having to say no to something else because we can work around it with the other trucks. So it really does depend on what else you could be doing with your time.
So I found this article on realestate.com.au, and I'll firstly start with the question. Out of roughly 10 million households in Australia, how many of those invest in property? How many of the 10 million households in Australia invest in property?
So how many of them own the houses, or how many have invested?
Own or own?
So their own home included? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Not investment.
Well, they're not renting. How many people own a property?
Well, I would say, don't really know, and I should know.
No, it's just a
I'm gonna
guess.
say 70%. No, less than that, 60%.
I'm going to go 45.
2 or 20%. 2 million out of 10 million. Yeah, so the article...
Well, my number's so far off. The children don't own houses.
No, households.
Households, yeah.
Really? Only 20%?
So the average Australian landlord isn't who you might imagine, is what the title of the article. A bit of a few points here, summary for you. Australia is unusual in that the vast majority of the residential dwelling stock is owned by households. That's kind of going against it, but more than 95% of it, in fact. That's unlike some other countries where government or corporate ownership of rentals is more common.
I feel like this is investment properties, not owning your own house. Because we're talking about landlords and...
Yeah, correct.
So because the Great Australian Dream is to own your own house.
Yeah,
right now, more people own their own home and that's what's... This has only come out of the retreat, but a huge shift that we're going to see over the next short amount of time to do predominantly rentals instead of us owning our home, because we're passing out into our generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is for... I definitely don't... I don't think this is household owners. I think this is landlords.
Yeah. So while most households don't invest in property, as I sort of said, the share that does has actually increased quite a bit in the past 4 decades. So it is going up still, but as you mentioned, maybe we're seeing a bit of a shift.
The impact of the new tenancy laws in Queensland that have on there.
What's those?
They're not very good for the
Owners.
landlord.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the biggest issue.
All right. We're going to finish with under overrated quick segment. Okay. Insulated drink bottles. Over underrated.
Overrated. You found random things. How random.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm going to sit on the fence on that
You
one.
know, you have one.
Properly
I
rated.
have one, and it was great when I used it, but then I just stopped using it.
Yeah, you just use a plastic bottle. So there you go,
So
overrated.
overrated.
Who doesn't have a good burns?
Who doesn't? Well, if you thought that was
Yeah.
random, think about this one. Mandarins.
Overrated.
No, underrated. They're great.
They smell
No, imperial mandarins. It has to be specific.
Oh, yeah.
Imperial.
I don't get
Saggy
excited.
skin.
Saggy. It's all about the saggy skin.
Yeah.
Quote that one. Email marketing.
Underrated.
Also under. I know that the rates of open and all that have come down a long way since over the last couple of decades, but I'd say under at the moment.
Apparently there's a bit of a resurgence because they have been down for so long. Businesses stopped doing it. So
And it's a case of you own the list. If you have somebody's email, it's not like Facebook can change something that means you're less impactful.
Yeah.
You have that list yourself.
yeah, that's true. And Google and email services are getting better at spam detection too, which is always good. Staging.
They still put us in spam.
Do they?
Our quotes. Yeah.
Must
9
be a
times out of
foxy
10.
name.
It is
Yeah.
foxy. 9 times out of 10. It's spam. Thanks, Google.
Staging using clothes in walk-in wardrobes.
Overrated.
Overrated.
Yeah,
Yeah. Still doesn't make it feel homely. Who only has white shirts?
that's true. Yeah,
Who
true.
owns fluffy bathrobes like that? No.
Taking the Clem 7 tunnel.
Oh, underrated.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that tunnel anyway.
Convenience.
No one else can know that though, because then everyone else will use it and then it'll become.
Using tunnels to save yourself 5 minutes. I feel like overrated.
Underrated.
Yeah. Convenience.
Great. All right. Well, that's it for the podcast, Foxy Property Chat podcast. Thanks for joining, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for asking questions, and we'll see you back here next week. Thanks, guys. Streams. Let's finish Instagram by Instagram. Thanks for watching. And video. Jake, your phone. Tell you what, you need a hammer just to press buttons. And this will be fun. How do I stop this one? Let's go here. Facebook and YouTube. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.